So imagine this. Your two little boys just got stabbed to death. Like your 6-year-old and your 5-year-old are gone. And 8 days later, you show up to their grave and you start spraying silly string on it. You're laughing, you're singing happy birthday, you're having a full-on party at a cemetery. And the news cameras are rolling and the whole country watches this clip and goes, what is wrong with this woman? Like, did she do it? Did this mom actually unalive her own kids? This is Darlie Routier. She's 26 years old. She's from a suburb of Dallas called Rowlett, Texas. And in the summer of 1996, she becomes the most hated woman in America. But here's the thing nobody tells you about that silly string video. There was a whole other part they didn't show. Before the birthday party at the grave, before any of that, there was a ceremony. Darlie and the family are crying, they're praying, they're placing flowers. It's exactly what you'd expect a grieving mother to do. The news just didn't air that part. And one of the jurors who sentenced her to death, he came out years later and said, if I had seen that full video, I would not have voted to convict. So now we've got a problem. Because either this is a cold-blooded mom who stabbed her own children and deserves to be on death row, or this is a woman who's been sitting in a prison cell for 30 years for something she didn't do. And the evidence? It goes both ways. All right, so the story starts with this girl, Darlie Lynn Peck. She's born in 1970 in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Normal childhood, nothing crazy. She meets this guy Darren when she's a teenager, and they get married in 1988. They're 18. They move to Texas, settle in this suburb outside Dallas called Rowlett. And Darren's got this small business, electronics testing, and it's doing pretty well for a while. They build this big house on Eagle Drive, nice neighborhood, nice street. They have 3 boys. Devin's the oldest, he's 6. Damon's 5. And then there's the baby, Drake, who's about 7 or 8 months old. And if you looked at them from the outside, you'd think, okay, normal suburban family. Big house, 3 kids, dad runs a business. Typical Texas dream, right? But here's what's going on behind the scenes. By spring of 1996, Darren's business is falling apart. They're about $22,000 in debt. Revenue's dropping, and Darren, and this is important, so remember this, Darren goes to Darlie's stepfather and starts floating this idea about staging a break-in at their house to collect insurance money. Like, he's literally asking his father-in-law, hey, what do you think about faking a burglary? Like it's a normal Sunday conversation. And the insurance situation is interesting. There's a $250,000 life insurance policy on Darlie. There's $800,000 on Darren. But on the boys, $5,000 to $10,000 each. That wouldn't even cover their funerals. So keep that in the back of your mind. June 5th, 1996. It's a Thursday night. Darlie and the 2 older boys, Devin and Damon, fall asleep downstairs. She's on the couch. The boys are on the floor in front of the TV. Darren takes the baby upstairs and goes to bed. Just a normal summer night. Until it's 2:31 in the morning. Darlie calls 911. She's screaming. She tells the dispatcher that someone broke into her house and stabbed her children. And she's bleeding. Her throat is cut. Now, this 911 call is going to become one of the most analyzed pieces of evidence in the entire case. Because here's what's weird about it. She first says they came in. Then she changes it to some man. She tells the operator she picked up the knife. We could have gotten the fingerprints, she says. But she never once asks the dispatcher how to help her boys. She never says, what do I do? How do I stop the bleeding? Are they going to be okay? She's focused on the knife and the intruder. Police arrive within 3 minutes. And what they find is bad. Devin, the 6-year-old, is face down in a pool of blood. He's not breathing. He was stabbed twice in the chest. He's gone. Damon, the 5-year-old, is nearby. He's still alive, but barely. He was stabbed multiple times in the back. He's going to die on the way to the hospital. The medical examiner later says Damon could have only survived about 8 minutes after those wounds. Remember that number. 8 minutes.
And Darlie? She's standing in the kitchen with a towel pressed to her throat. Her neck is slashed. And this wound, it comes within 2 millimeters of her carotid artery. That's the artery that if you cut it, you bleed out in minutes. 2 millimeters. She also has stab wounds on her left shoulder and slash marks on her right arm and hand. She's taken to Baylor Medical Center. She's released 2 days later.
Now, upstairs, Baby Drake is fine, Darren's fine, nobody went upstairs, nothing's stolen, nothing's disturbed up there at all. So here's what Darlie tells the police. She says she fell asleep on the couch watching TV with the boys. She wakes up and there's a man standing over her, maybe on top of her. She feels the boy struggling. She gets up, sees the guy walking through the kitchen toward the utility room. She follows him. He drops a knife on the utility room floor. She picks it up. He goes out through the garage. She goes back, sees the boys, and calls 911. Okay, so the police start investigating, and this is where things get really, really interesting.
First, the garage window. There's a screen that's been cut, which looks like maybe that's how the intruder got in. But the screen was cut from the inside. They find fiberglass dust on a bread knife from the kitchen, the same bread knife that was probably used to make sandwiches the day before, and the windowsills in the garage covered in dust. Undisturbed dust. Nobody climbed through that window. The mulch outside in the flower beds, not a single footprint.
Then they bring in luminol and they spray the kitchen, and the luminol lights up the sink like a Christmas tree. Someone cleaned blood out of that sink, and there are bloody footprints, Darlie's bloody footprints right in front of it. Then there's the wine glass. There's a broken wine glass on the kitchen floor, and it's sitting on top of the bloody footprints, not under them, on top. So the blood came first, and then the glass got knocked over after. That's not a break-in, that's staging. And the vacuum cleaner near the couch, Darlie's blood is on top of it, but the bloody footprints go underneath it. So the vacuum was moved after the blood was already there. Then there's the nightshirt. Darlie's nightshirt has blood on it. Her blood, Devin's blood, Damon's blood, all mixed together. And the blood spatter expert, this guy Tom Bevel, he testifies that there's cast-off blood on the back of the nightshirt. And what that means is someone raised a knife up over their head and swung it down like a stabbing motion, and the blood flicked off the blade onto the back of the shirt. That's not defensive, that's offensive. But then there's the sock. And the sock changes everything. 75 yards down the alley from the Routier house, police find a sock. It's got blood on it. Lab tests come back. The blood belongs to both Devin and Damon, both boys. But here's the thing. There's no Darlie's blood on the sock. And there are no bloody footprints leading from the house to where the sock was found. And the sock, it matches other socks from the Routier home, socks that belonged to Darren. So how did that sock get there? If Darlie did it, she would have had to stab the boys, get their blood on the sock, run 75 yards down the alley, drop it, run back, cut the screen from inside, clean up the sink, break the wine glass on top of the blood, slash her own throat within 2 millimeters of her carotid artery, and then call 911, all while Damon is still alive. And Damon can only survive 8 minutes. Oh, and also, the 911 call lasts almost 6 minutes. So if he survives 8 minutes total, and she's on the phone for 6, that leaves 2 minutes to do all of that. 2 minutes! The prosecution says she planted the sock before she cut herself. The defense says that's ridiculous. And honestly, I don't know how you look at that math and feel comfortable either way. January 6th, 1997, the trial starts. But not in Dallas. They move it to Kerrville, Texas, a small town about 4 hours away. The lead prosecutor is this guy Greg Davis, and during jury selection, he tells the potential jurors straight up, his goal is execution. The prosecution's case boils down to this. Darlie is a materialistic, self-centered woman whose family was drowning in debt, and she unalived her sons because of it. That's literally how prosecutor Greg Davis describes her. A self-centered woman, a materialistic woman, and a woman cold enough to murder her own 2 children.
Their evidence? The screen cut from inside, the luminol in the sink, the blood on the nightshirt, the wine glass on top of the blood, the 911 call, and of course, the silly string video. And that video hits hard with the jury. They watch it during deliberation 8 or 9 times, just watching this woman laugh at her dead son's grave over and over.
But the defense has answers. Darlie's attorney is Doug Mulder, one of the most well-known defense lawyers in Dallas. And he brings in Dr. Vincent DeMaio, the chief medical examiner of San Antonio. DeMaio looks at the wound on Darlie's throat and says that's not self-inflicted. 2 millimeters from the carotid artery. In his experience, people who cut themselves don't go that deep. That's not a hesitation wound. That's somebody trying to take you out. The defense also hammers on the fingerprint. There's an unidentified fingerprint on the coffee table in the living room. They run it through the FBI's database. No match. It's not Darlie's, not Darren's, not any family members. So whose is it? Nobody knows. Still, to this day, nobody knows. And the motive? The defense tears it apart. The insurance policies on the boys are $5,000 to $10,000 each. That doesn't even cover the funeral. If Darlie wanted money, why wouldn't she go after Darren? He's got an $800,000 policy. And why leave baby Drake alive upstairs? If you're unaliving your kids for insurance money, why stop at 2?
But here's where Darlie hurts herself. She decides to testify. Her lawyers tell her not to. She does it anyway. And she gets destroyed on cross-examination by prosecutor Toby Shook. She can't keep her story straight. She gets emotional, she gets confused, and it does not go well. The crime scene consultant, James Cron, tells the jury the scene looks staged. Tom Bevel explains the blood spatter. And the jury's looking at all of this, and they're looking at the silly string video, and after 4 hours of deliberation, they come back with guilty. Capital murder. And 3 days later, Darlie Routier is sentenced to death by lethal injection. She's 27 years old. So here's where it gets complicated, because the case doesn't end with the verdict. A few years after the trial, juror Charles Sanford comes forward, and what he says is pretty disturbing. He says the silly string video was basically the deciding factor. The jury watched it over and over. But he also says if he had seen the full video, the one that showed the solemn memorial ceremony before the birthday party, he would not have voted to convict. And then there are the bruise photographs. 4 days after the attack, someone takes photos of Darlie's arms, and they're covered in bruises. Deep, extensive bruising that wasn't visible at the hospital. The kind of bruising you'd get from a physical struggle. The jury never saw these photos. And that same juror, Sanford, he says if he'd seen them, that would have changed his vote too. And then there's Darren. Now, nobody at trial points the finger at Darren, because here's the thing. Darlie's defense attorney, Doug Mulder, had briefly represented Darren for 1 day before switching to Darlie's case. And that 1 day created a legal conflict of interest. He couldn't accuse Darren of anything because he'd technically been Darren's lawyer. So the one person who might have been an alternate suspect, legally off limits. And remember, Darren is the one who talked to Darlie's stepfather about staging a break-in for insurance money. Darren is the one whose business was failing. The sock with both boys' blood on it matched Darren's socks. He failed a polygraph test. And there's a $250,000 life insurance policy on Darlie. Not on the boys, on Darlie. So you've got to ask yourself, was Darlie the wrong Routier? In 2008, a court orders new DNA testing on the evidence. In 2014, a federal judge grants even more testing on the fingerprint, on the sock, on the nightshirt. In 2018, a third round of DNA testing gets ordered, and this time, both the prosecution and the defense agree it needs to happen. It's now 2026. Those DNA results, still pending. She's been on death row for 30 years, waiting. And here's maybe the wildest detail of all. Remember that book, Precious Angels? Barbara Davis wrote it in 1999. The whole book makes the case for Darlie's guilt. It was one of the most damning things written about her. And then Barbara Davis changed her mind. She now believes Darlie is innocent, and she donates every cent she makes from that book to Darlie's defense fund. Darlie and Darren divorced in 2011. He still says she's innocent. She's still sitting in a cell at the Patrick O'Daniel unit in Gatesville, Texas. She still says a man broke into their house that night. Devin would have been 36. Damon would have been 35. And somewhere in a crime lab, their blood is sitting on a sock, on a nightshirt, and on a fingerprint that still doesn't match anyone. And nobody can tell you for certain what happened in that house on Eagle Drive. 2 millimeters. That's the distance between Darlie's wound and the artery that would have killed her. And honestly, that might also be the distance between her guilt and her innocence. And we still don't know which side the truth falls on.